Hey, so hi everyone, I'm back for my guide on mid-game objectives. Mid-game objectives. So we have talked about the early game, we have talked about victory points, and now we're talking about mid-game objectives. And it's a very natural flow. Early game, victory points, mid-game. And here's where you can start applying some of the strategies. But I need to talk about it very broadly because there are a lot of things that are very niche about this, but I will just try to explain it the best way I can. So let's just jump right in. So in order for you to understand this, right, you need to have covered at least 2 of the videos, not all the videos. You just need to know early game objectives and you need to know the victory points, at least the section on 5 easy and 5 hard victory points. And why is that essential? Because you'll be gearing the focus to how we're going to achieve the 5 hard victory points. And the early game objectives lead into the mid game objectives, okay? Because the early game objectives are the ones that kind of form the guideposts to tell you what victory points should you target. So what happens after the early game once you've accomplished some of the early game objectives? And the early game objectives we have stated are Swordmaster, after Swordmaster is Interstellar shipping, then after that is deck building, and none of these then is resources. And then under resources you have victory points, you have spice, and you have intrigues. Okay, so what do you do after you accomplish these early game objectives? You want to convert these early game objectives into victory points, and you want to look at how do these resources or advantages, and how can you turn them into these hard victory points while still meeting your 5 easy victory points. Okay, so I'll run through 2 examples, and the first example I'll just talk about it. So this is not a very stellar opening, right? Say you are in a very bad position and the only thing that you bought this game was Replacement Ice. Replacement Ice is a pretty good card, right? But it's not like Swordmaster or it's not Lady Jessica. You don't feel super confident with it, but you bought Replacement Ice, but you drew two intrigues. One intrigue you drew is Ambush, which is very good, and one is Diversion, which people absolutely hate. So how do you use this to talk about your mid-game objectives? So first we identify the advantages. Advantages you have is that you have Replacement Ice, you have a combat intrigue, and you have a very niche intrigue, Diversion, right? So what can you do with these advantages, right? So you want to maximize your advantages to get you victory points. So if you think about Replacement Ice, right, what does Replacement Ice get you? Replacement Ice gets you a Scarab. Replacement Ice also allows you to play grafted together with experimentations. So it means that you can play yellows on blue spaces, right? And then you can also thin out your deck. It means that you draw your good cards more often, and you can also draw more experimentations over the course of the game. Most of the time, right, Replacement Ice by itself will allow you to get the second Twilight point, and at some point in time, I think if your deck is built for it, maybe you can even get a Spice Mass Flow. But either way, it's a very good card in that manner. The thing about it is that you need to learn how to play with it. You need to try to stack your deck to draw it as much as possible. You need to figure out what cards to trash out of your deck, and you need other cards. You need to buy other cards for Replacement Ice to be good. Replacement Ice by itself is not game winning, but once you have Replacement Ice, you should try to shoot for another like 5 to 7 coster card, which is very powerful as well. Then in combination of Replacement Ice and the other card, right, you'll generally be able to get a lot of advantage because you'll draw both of them very often due to the drawing nature of Replacement Ice and the deck thinning nature of Replacement Ice. So that's how you must look at this one card. And so this deck building element is one small element, but it has very nuanced and very niche things to it, right? And these are type of things that you only learn through more play, right? So I can talk about this card, but when you actually play it, how good you are with it is another matter. Sure, like some of the skills are transferable, but there are some cards which are very strange that require you to experience for yourself, right? Then also you have intrigues. Intrigues are the same, right? Some intrigues are quite straightforward, easy to convert to victory points, like corner the market or plans within plans, like very straightforward. But some like Diversion, right? What do you do with it? So let's say with an ambush, right? Ambush, ideally you want to cash it in early because when you play early in the game, right, it's very likely that this will turn into a victory point. Very likely, especially if it's very early on combat. But diversion on the other hand, right, you might look at it and it's like one freighter icon, but what can one freighter icon do? It doesn't seem like much, right? A lot of people just try to get it out of their hands as quickly as possible. But I will tell you, right, that when I have this, I will visualize my hard game VPs. I'll visualize my hard game VPs as the second Twiexu point. So I think that is achievable if I bought replacement ice early. I think the early combat point is achievable assuming that it shows up. So if it shows up, I can definitely try to get it, right? I would try. Okay, so the Emperor Alliance is not guaranteed, but I will try very hard to get the Emperor Alliance, and then I'll try to get a tier 3, the tier 3 combat. And the Emperor Alliance and the tier 3 combat, it's all driven by the card diversion. Okay, so for mid-game objectives, right, I want to win a very early tier 2 combat, right? Early tier 2 combat comes up, I'll try to find a way to put in troops to win a point because of ambush, right? I'll try to very aggressively trash my deck, and in the process, I'll also try to pick up something that's like good, like 5 cost, 6 cost, something like Stilgar is very good, right? I want it down to set up so that I have 3 influence on Emperor, and I want to set up 1 influence on Fremen, because there's a particular combo that you can do that if you are the second tier of your the shipping track, right? Then you have, if you have some garrison, you go to Hardy Warriors, you deploy 4 troops in, you ship down, you cash out the 2 troops there, and then you get an influence bump on Emperor, you get another 2 troops, and that is a total of 8 troops into combat. You can get more even by maybe like something like invasion ships or something, but if you set this up well, right, you're in for a very big round 7 swing, and all enabled through diversion. Is this the best thing you can do? No, it's not the best thing you can do, but with diversion, it is possible. So it's not the best intrigue, but with diversion, you can do these type of things. And so if you know how to use replacement ice, you can do a certain set of things. If you know how to use diversion, you can do a certain set of things. And so then these are how the early game advantages, right, shape what mid-game objectives you want and what hard victory points you want to obtain. So I'll run through another example. And the thing is, the better your early game advantages are, right, the more flexible you are and the more free you are in terms of your mid game, that you can kind of do more things. You're not constrained to do very specific things. As you can see just now, right, in the previous example, it was very specific things. I wanted to get 3 influence on Emperor. I wanted to get 2 second on the second rung of shipping track. I wanted to get 1 influence with Fremen. So these are some very specific things I wanted to do, right? So let's say for this game, so Paul has won 2 early combat VPs, and mid game can be anywhere between rounds 2 to 4, and it can constantly be evaluated, right? So let's say by end of round 4, right, he has 2 combat VPs, he has 1 Spice Must Flow, in his deck he has In the Shadows, Other Memory, and Truthsayer. Right, so he has a good Benny deck going, and he has In the Shadows. But he has no Swordmaster, right? He has no Swordmaster, he has no Interstellar shipping. So, what is his advantages? His biggest advantage is that he has 3 hard victory points, right? So if he has 3 hard victory points, how many more does he need? He needs 2 more hard victory points, right? And then he also has In the Shadows. So if you play In the Shadows, what does In the Shadows give you? In the Shadows gives you the Bene Gesserit Alliance, as long as you draw it enough, right? So you just need to draw In the Shadows enough, and you get the Bene Gesserit Alliance. So he has 3 hard victory points. He more or less has a Bene Gesserit Alliance, and all he needs is 1 more victory point. And what victory point is guaranteed? A Spice Must Flow. So all he needs is a Spice Must Flow at this point, right? So let's say his mid-game objectives, right, is to obtain his 5 easy game victory points to make sure he gets it, right? So all friendships, the first Twiexu point, he probably wants to get High Council, and he wants to store resources to get the Spice Must Flow on a turn where he draws High Persuasion, right? So when he has High Persuasion, he has High Council, it's very easy for him, even though he has 2 actions, to get a Spice Must Flow, and that is very easily his 5th hard victory point. And you might say that this this is not a real example, but this actually did come out in the grand finals of the Dune Imperium Sword Throne tournament. I have this game in my channel. I'll try to put a link here. You can go look at it. So great, what's his name? Captain West, right? Or his name is Player in the game, right? He has not the best early game setup, but he got a lot of early game victory points. 4 early game victory points by round 4. Right? And if he played it slightly differently, right, and he observed what his win condition was, I'm very sure that he could have ended the game relatively early, as long as he found that last victory point through Spice Must Slow. The issue is that he ended up working very hard for Swordmaster, and then with his Toitsu cubes he bought Twisted Mentat, which then made getting his first Toitsu point very hard. And in the end, he still almost won the game, right? So don't get me wrong, there are multiple paths you can take to win the game. He lost slightly, but he could have won as well. So do check out this game and see that in that position after round 4. He could have definitely bought a Spice of Slow and definitely tried to end the game. So do check this game out. So what did we learn? We learned that whatever advantages you have will shape the victory points that you are able to get, right? And a lot of them are very niche, so a lot of them are very specific intrigues or very specific cards in the Imperium Row deck, right? But let's just talk about the broad ones. So the 3 big advantages: Swordmaster, Interstellar Shipping, and Deck Building. So we all say Swordmaster is good, but why is Swordmaster good? Swordmaster actually it's the most flexible early game objective. And what that means, right, is that you actually don't really have very specific mid-game objectives. You can really do anything you like. So to players who are very good at Dune, right, this is an advantage, right? It leaves all your doors open, you can do anything you like and come out with a win. However, to new players, right, I feel like this can also be a burden because you aren't sure what you're supposed to do. What do I do after I get Swordmaster? There's some very easy ways to play this, and I'll talk about some of the very simple ways to play this. It comes with a lot of things come with experience, and a lot of things you'll see as the more you play. But one very easy way to approach it, right, is that there are a lot of cheap faction cards that aren't very good by themselves, right? They are mediocre and sit in the Imperium Row because no one wants to buy them. However, if you know you're getting Swordmaster, so round 1, if you know you're getting Swordmaster, round 2, or if you know you're getting Swordmaster very early on, you can look to pick up all these faction cards, because these faction cards will get you faction friendships and will get you faction alliances, right? It turns a simple action into half a victory point, right? So if you're wondering what to do when you're Swordmaster, one way you can play it is to just pick up faction access. You buy faction access, you play faction access. Okay, the cards kind of play themselves once you have them, right? You have these cards, especially the ones that don't infiltrate, right? You're like, okay, if I Spice Hunter and I have no water, then I'll prioritize going to Still Suits first action. Go there, half a point, right? One of the things you can do, right, is that you can also very actively play your experimentation, right? So you can play your experimentation to like places like smuggling, or you can play it to places like Imperial Basin for, let's say, if there's one maker bonus there. So just 2 spice, right, with an experimentation. So you might say, hey, Cheesable, that's not a very good action, but actually, because you have more actions, they're actually relatively high value, because you do need to play a certain amount of experimentations through the game. And I think in my talk with Zazibu, when we talk about Money Cares, right, he talks about when you play experimentations, everyone wants to play them. And when you take away these easy spots, right, there are a lot of times where players will find themselves not being able to play or having not played enough experimentations. So blocking the yellow spots and also, so blocking the yellow spots is a good thing. And yeah, playing your own experimentations is good. So play your experimentations. Okay, so these are the 2 things you can do with Swordmaster. So what are your mid-game objectives? You do not have any yet. You want to pick up good things. You want to pick up good cards. You want to pick up other advantages, be it tax, be it high council, be it resources, be it more intrigues, right? And then you just constantly reevaluate, right? Once you use these new advantages you have to reevaluate what are your mid-game objectives. right? So Swordmaster is the most flexible, but at the same time, it can be a burden to some. So these are some ways you can play it. So the next thing you can do, right, is that you can, if you have interstellar shipping, right, so the next advantage, interstellar shipping. I always had this rule ever since Rise of X. So I've always said that if the interstellar shipping player gets Swordmaster round 3, the game is over. the round 3 is the round where if the interstellar shipping player gets Swordmaster, the game is very, very hard for the rest of the table. Okay, and the reason for that is that what does shipping give you? Shipping gives you resources, it gives you troops, it gives you faction influence, but a lot of times you're not able to spend the resources or the troops, right? Especially the troops, unless you have additional actions. Especially if one of your actions is going to interstellar shipping, right? Your troops never really become points, right? Until you have Swordmaster. So Swordmaster is the vital moment at which shipping becomes really strong. So what is the mid-game objectives for the interstellar shipping player? It is to get Swordmaster, right? The mid-game objective for the interstellar shipping player is to get Swordmaster. And most of the times this is true, okay? And you are getting resources. A lot of times the table is a lot better now, so you might not get Swordmaster very quickly, but if you can get it round 4, I think it's pretty good. Round 5, it's okay. Right? So what other mid-game objectives do you want? You want to identify alliances that you want. Okay? Going interstellar shipping gives you more faction influence, generally allows you to pressure additional track, right? And you want to pressure one alliance, right? And get one alliance. Most of the time the interstellar shipping player goes for the spacing alliance, but you can choose whatever you want. Yeah, but do note like what other cards other players have bought and what alliances are they going to go for, right? Because until you get Swordmaster, it's still a bit contentious about the alliances. Okay, but you should identify alliances and take 1 or 2 alliances, right? So at the end, right, end of the game, right, the interstellar shipping player will have a mixture of hard VPs that something to do like that. You have a mixture of alliances. You have some combat VP points because you have so many more troops than everyone else, and or you can have some techs that give you points. Things like memo quarters or maybe even Holtzman engine or spy satellites, right? So some of these things will get you points, and the interstellar shipping player generally has these hard VPs. So talking about deck building. So deck building actually is the most nuanced, or when I say nuanced, it's like I cannot cover it in one guide. I have to cover it card by card in order for me to explain it. So if you have any cards you want me to explain, right, do write in the comments and then I'll try to explain it in a future video or something. But let's say replacement eyes. How do you play replacement eyes? Why do you know how to play replacement eyes? Have you so if you play other graph cards, you'll know somewhat how to play this card. You have to play the cards that actively trash cards, and then cards that also draw, to kind of like figure out how do you manage your deck, right? But if you know how to use replacement eyes is very, very good. Most of the times people don't know how to use it. They play it, they just trash it and get a scarab and draw a card. Pretty good, right? But you can maximize it actually. So how do we talk about deck building? I'm going to talk about it very broadly. I'm going to talk about it in 2 categories. One category is the high costed cards and one is the niche cards. When I talk about high costed cards, most of the time they're high costed. Sometimes they're not high costed. Sometimes it's just like in the shadows and you just need to draw it very often, right? But these are cards that you generally want to draw very often and you want to play very often, right? So things like Gurney, like Lady Jessica, or something like Stitch Horror, right? When you have these type of cards, what is your mid-game objective? Your mid-game objective actually is to draw these cards as much as possible. You want to draw these cards and play these cards as much as possible because you have very high precision, and then you can use the high precision to get more powerful cards in your deck. Like the amount of times you see the Lady Jessica player get Quizettes is so high because the power of Jessica is just so powerful, right? Jessica just enables a player to get Quizettes very easily, right? So high costed cards, you want to be able to manage your deck, you want to be able to draw them as much as possible, you want to stack your deck, you want to force rotations, so you want to shuffle your discard into your deck once they are in the discard pile. But if let's say if they are in your deck and then your discard pile are not shuffled, you don't want to force a shuffle. So things like that, you want to manage your deck, right? And that's your objectives when you have these type of high costed cards. Which why when you see me play a card like Gurney, right, I'm very mindful of where it is in my deck, right? And how am I going to play it this round, next round, right? And like even when I play Gurney, right, when I draw the card, I try not to have it shuffle. So there are a lot of things that come into play with these style cards and comes with practice as well. So on the other side, right, we have niche cards. So niche cards, right, things like Guild Ambassador, Toxic Surgeon, Opulence, right, these cards play themselves, right? So when you have like Guild Ambassador, what do you want to do? You want to get the Spacing Alliance, and then you want to get Spice. Right? Quite straightforward, right? So they play themselves. Talexu Surgeon, what do you want to do? You want to not spend your Talexu cubes. Okay, you don't spend your Talexu cubes, and then you convert them into scarabs, right? The moment you spend your Talexu cubes, and hey, suddenly you don't have Talexu cubes, you can convert into scarabs. Opulence, what you don't want to do, you want to collect Solari, and you want to spend this Solari to get you victory points. So these cards, very straightforward, very easy to understand. But there's some niche cards like Long Reach, right? The Long Reach just tells you that, hey, you need other Bene Gesserit cards. Most of the time that's what you think, but actually it's a lot easier to graph this card. Like if you have Long Reach, cheap graph cards like Face Dancer, Initiate becomes good, right? I think Drazer and Felgdeath like it a lot. If Long Reach is in the row and a very cheap graph card, or maybe like Chair Dog is in the row, like these are cards that you kind of pick up. Right, but these very specific niche cards, you have to look at the card and kind of understand it. A lot of times, you have to learn the hard way. You just have to play with it and figure out how to use it. Yeah. And so that's the end of my mid-game guide, right? So mid-game objectives are dynamic. They constantly change every single round. So after round 2, you're looking at it and thinking, what are my early game objectives, or what are my advantages, what are my mid games, right? Then after round 3, you think about, okay, what are my new mid game objectives, right? Or what are my new objectives, right? And they constantly cycle, and the hard victory points that you're trying to go for constantly change, right? And then and it constantly is refined, right? So it is constantly refined, and the better your game is going, the more options you have, the worse your game is going, the narrower your options are, right? You need to play a very high risk, high reward game, the narrower your options are, okay? But they are dynamic, and you should constantly think about it. And the best time to think about it actually is probably at the start of the round. So you might think that, oh, end of the round you think of your mid-game objectives, but actually at the start of the round is when you should think about it, right? Because that's when you plan out your entire round, right? And that's where you should think about what are your objectives, what are your hard victory points, and what actions are you going to take to get there. And so I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope this helps you. And if it isn't, hopefully send your opponents here, and maybe you'll confuse them too. And I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you around. Bye!